poverty, drug dealing, hustling, and sadly some beef too. As the neighborhood got worse and worse, the young generation joined together as one massive crew. And over the years, the Fillmore crew developed a beef with the entire Hunters Point. Two giant crews from completely opposite sides of the city. This was a recipe for disaster. The massive beef lasted for over a decade, with more murders than you could possibly count. It was truly a horrific situation until leaders from both sides decided to get together and squash it once and for all. Thankfully, all that was able to end, but then the next generation would start something possibly worse than the previous beef. They'd spark off the very first internal beef in the Fillmore, uptown versus downtown, divided by Fillmore Street to the east and to the west. The former massive neighborhood crew split into two and they began knocking each other off. And this is truly when the Fillmore neighborhood got out of control. Now, instead of having to drive all the way across the city to slide on someone, all you had to do was leave your house and walk down the street. And the fact that everyone involved grew up together and used to be in the same gang made it even worse, cause now it was really personal. Guys from up the way would put their thumbs up, and the guys from down the way would put their thumbs down. And if you were caught in the wrong section, trust me, your life was at risk. So in the late 90s bleeding into the early 2000s, the Fillmore was truly a killing zone, with former best friends knocking each other off. As you'll see, this set a horrible trend for the future generations, but more importantly for now, it caused the city to tear down all of the projects. First, they tore down the Hayes Valley projects and replaced it with this, then they tore down the Out of Control projects and turned it into this, and finally they tore down the Chopper City projects and turned them into this. And although a lot of the old residents were allowed to live in the new buildings, a lot of them had to move to other cities. How I know this? Well, cause after the rebuild, the Fillmore went from having 5,000 public housing units down to just 1,500. And not to mention that between 1990 and 2005, the neighborhood went from being 75% black down to just 11%.
Golly, San Francisco been doing these people wrong since the jump.
Hipsters and techies quickly took over the neighborhood, and if you lived there, you would have no idea that it used to be the trenches. So after all those turf wars against Hunters Point and other sections of the Fillmore, the city pretty much kicked you all out, and now it was all for nothing. Okay, so does that mean the story ends here? I mean, the neighborhood's gentrified, they tore down the projects, and pretty much everyone moved out to the East Bay. The answer is obviously no, because the beefs certainly continued, just they operate way differently and they involve way less people.
So after all that damn yapping, let's get into it.
It's now the mid-2000s in the Fillmore, and instead of it being a giant uptown versus a giant downtown, every small section has its own identity, meaning that each individual project is its own thing, with no ties to anything else. So here are the new sections. First, you've got Eddie Rock, the yellow townhomes that span a couple blocks down Eddy and Laguna. Then just a couple blocks down Eddy Street you have Knockout, also known as KO, and for those who don't know, this is what Messy Marv used to rap. Then another 2 blocks down Eddy you have Chopper City, also known as the Chop, or sometimes by 223. These are the 3 sections that share Eddy Street, and let's just say that none of them got along. Well, next we have the Mac, the brown projects on McAllister Street, and these guys are pretty irrelevant, and they're not even in this video. Well, next we have Grove Street, also known as the Banneker's or 800. To outsiders, this has always been a pretty unknown section, but rappers like Yada and Semi-Auto Cease are from there. While just a couple blocks south of them, you have Hayes Valley, also known as the Zone, and this is 2 separate projects in the middle of a very rich neighborhood. So these are the projects in the Fillmore that you need to know about, and they all exist within a couple blocks distance of each other. Although all of these sections, except for the Mac, have a long history of knocking shit down, none more have a worse reputation than Eddie Rock. This is because Eddie Rock always saw themselves as the bullies of the area, and they always wanted to kick off beefs. And in the mid-2000s, Eddie Rock were true haters of the only section in Fillmore that didn't have a project. This would be known as CDP, which stands for Central Divisadero Playas. And these guys originate in a section west of Divisadero Street, but their main block is Central Street. And if you're from San Francisco, you're hearing this, and you're like, what? This is a really nice neighborhood full of big-ass, multi-million-dollar houses. How is this the hood? Well, these are the houses the CDP members grew up in, and for that reason, the rest of the Fillmore saw them as silver spoon babies. But truly, CDP didn't care, as they weren't trying to be the toughest guys around, they just wanted to be the richest. And that they were, because they ran up one of the biggest drug operations that California has ever seen. They had the money, the cars, the chains, and most importantly, the women. Well, unfortunately, being the guys having shit in the Fillmore definitely brought some haters, specifically Eddie Rock. So allegedly, Eddie Rock kicked off a beef for no reason and eliminated 4 of their members. Pow, 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 pow. Just like that, the beef was kicked off. Well, Eddie definitely underestimated CDP, as they'd have to go from hustlers to certified demons. CDP would literally go from silver spoon babies to certified hitmen, and they'd knock down a bunch of Eddie Rock members. This situation could honestly be its own movie, but you guys don't have all day. But what you need to know is that Eddie Rock pretty much went to war with every single section in the Fillmore, making them the black sheep of the family. Starting in the mid-2000s, they had bloody wars with CDP, The Chop, KO, Grove Street, and Hayes. This was truly a wild era in San Francisco as a whole, and if you don't believe me, let me prove it to you. In the year 2007, San Francisco had 85 black homicide victims. Mind you, the city only had 45,000 black residents. And if this doesn't stand out to you, let me compare it to Los Angeles, the land of the Bloods and Crips. That same year in 2007, Los Angeles had 94 black homicide victims, but that's despite having 400,000 black residents. I say that to say that being a black resident in San Francisco was 10 times more deadly than being one in Los Angeles. I'm not saying this to glorify anything, I just want you to understand how serious these beefs were. After all this horrific bloodshed, District Attorney Kamala Harris had to put her foot down. In fact, she was so upset with these hoods that she actually sued them, in particular Eddie Rock and The Chop. But even more than this, police began seriously investigating every section of the Fillmore. After Kamala Harris made it illegal for all of them to post up in front of the projects, all police had to do was drive down the block, see them, search them, and take them to jail. Locked away went 12 CDP members, 15 Eddie Rock members, 10 Chop members, a bunch of KO members, and the list goes on. Pretty much by 2012, all of the streets in the Fillmore were shut down. Thankfully, this made the neighborhood very peaceful, a tranquility that it deeply needed. But on the flip side, it also had some downsides. What it did was leave a lot of children fatherless, a whole lot of Fillmore fatherless babies. This meant that the community needed to step up. The guys who were left out of the indictments needed to change their lives around and be there for the younger generation. And thankfully, one person stepped up more than any other, and this would be a man by the name of Lamar Williams, also known as Chi. Chi decided to dedicate his life to steering the youth away from jumping into the streets. This meant constantly checking in with all of the youth and definitely being a shoulder they can always lean on. In addition, he also became a track and football coach at Mission High School, trying to keep kids in sports and off the streets. Not to mention stepping up for his 2 nephews whose parents were swept up in the CDP indictment. These would be Stacy and Laprelle Gilton, who tried to play sports but were garbage and instead took a different path. They decide to become rappers under the name of Lil Yee and Lil Peep, and somehow they instantly both blow up. This occurs between 2015 and 2016, and this is the exact time where the young generation of Fillmore is starting to come outside. But thankfully this is a quiet period, and on top of this, they're not really representing a section. So they take advantage and create a huge buzz in the Bay. Kid you not, every Filipino girl in Daly City and Vietnamese girl in San Jose was like, "Oh my god, I love Lil Peep." So for the next couple of years, Lil Peep and Lil Yee run the Fillmore music scene. And although they're not really repping a specific project, they're definitely hanging with members of The Chop, Grove, and Hayes. Why I mention this? Well, cause this is the time when a new generation of beef starts to brew. And it all begins when a new rapper hits the scene. This new rapper is a shit disturber, and he's bringing up a lot of old beef.